안녕 친구들. I hope you've been well. Welcome if you're a new subscriber. We are going to be doing a quick review of episodes 9 and 10 of course, Heart to Heart. I will tell you, for those of you who are new to this channel, these reviews were really designed to be informal chats of my thoughts, obviously, of the past week's episodes. And Heart to Heart, I don't know about you guys, but I do enjoy. And mostly because Chaegangi, of course, you guys know, but it's such a quirky, sleepy little romance and romantic comedy, and you really learn to care about the characters and just, you know, I didn't mention this in the previous video reviews, but I don't know about you guys, but I really am enjoying the soundtrack that accompany it. I think that's what gives it definitely that quirky sense, and I don't know, the music is just really great as well. Anyway, episodes 9 and 10, a lot has happened in those episodes. Certainly we see the development of Hongdo's character, the grandmother character, Oh Young-nae, becoming much, comically so, the, I guess, object of affection of the 회장님, Grandpa Ko. And then we also see in episode 9 the potential, I don't know if you guys see it, but I certainly see it, of Tusu becoming really great future brothers-in-law with Ishok. You know, when Tusu finds out that Ishok, out of his negligence to go take care of his ex-girlfriend, ends up leaving Hongdo in such a situation that Hongdo ends up trapping herself inside the storage. And so of course he's furious, and he goes and seeks out Ishok, and they get into a huge fist fight, and then they end up having this, you know, drinking session, if you will. So I'm looking forward to the eventual resolution of that conflict, and of course Ishok and Tusu becoming really good friends, and we can kind of see, because they get along with each other. Okay, as of right now, they're not getting along with each other, I will concede, but you see the potential of that, especially when they're drinking buddies and such. They're so frank with each other. And I think that's one of the strengths of this series, regardless of what you may feel about the characters and the storyline and whatnot. I love the fact that there is definitely honesty among the characters. We see that with Hongdo and Tusu. We see that with Tusu and Ishok. We see that with Hongdo and Ishok too, although for those of you who are like, yeah, but what about her inability or unwillingness to tell Ishok about the grandmother? Which is true. There's a part of her that doesn't want to, nor does she feel like she can tell Ishok about the grandmother. But as you know, for those of you who've seen episode 10, she has no choice now but to tell, because she's been caught red-handed literally in a, you know, somewhat compromising situation. And so it's this weird thing where Ishok, who knows what's going inside Ishok's head. I think more than anything else, when he storms out of the hotel, you know, cafe, what's probably motivating him more than anything else is the understanding that she hasn't, or the realization that she hasn't seen fit to include this portion of her life, to reveal that to him. And of course Ishok knows that, you know, Tusu has taken care of this halmoni and has, you know, spent some time with her, and so he's certainly reacting on a much more fundamental level of just being really furious that she hasn't told him. And then there's also, I'm sure, a little bit of concern as to whether, you know, what is really her motivation. Although his knowing what he does about her, I don't think he's going to think that she's necessarily approaching his grandfather with any nefarious, you know, motives or anything like that. But anyway, today's review is going to be all over the place because I just got done teaching a class, and the things that I wanted to talk to you about have all scattered to the winds. So a few things that I did want to mention that I do remember to talk about today. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was certainly thinking it. From episodes 1 through 8, is I did not want Tusu to get together with Sero. And I love her name because I don't know if there's any other significance to that name, but the fact that she's named Sero, to me, it makes it really seem as though the parents were hoping for a new start, 새도, with her name, and perhaps it was a way for them to start afresh with a new child, after the death of their first one. Not to say that another child can replace, one who was so tragically lost, but that there is a sense of new hope, new beginning. But on the flip side too, with Tusu, I'm hoping that her name will be much more significant, that he'll be able to see her as a new start for him as well. And I love how she's so in his face and very, she's cute, Anso is very cute. And so, the little bubble wrap that she puts in all the corners, and how she's trying to talk to the rest of the police station to encourage or to root for her as she pursues Tusu. I don't know, to me that's very charming. I think she's such an adorable little character. And I wasn't going to like her, especially with Tusu, but I think, and many of you who've seen episodes 9 and 10, I think you'll agree, Tusu, I liked his kind of gentle character. And then for some reason in 9 and 10, I think he finally got to a point where he's in desperate, he's becoming more and more desperate, much more impatient. And so he's really starting to exert kind of that green-eyed monster, and he's starting to come off a little bit less likable. And so when we have Settle come in and she provides that nice romantic conflict, I think hopefully that'll get him to start thinking about her and less about Hongdo and become less obsessive, because I could see him like starting to get to be a little bit obsessive and maybe not so likable of a second lead. I really do want to like him. I really do. He seems like such a likable character, but I think his desperation, it's starting to grow, and it's just so heartbreaking to watch. Especially when he and Aesop are talking, and Aesop obviously is all about bringing her out of her shell and moving her forward, and Tusu knows that when she fully comes out, she's going to continue to stay with Aesop. And so there's a part of Tusu, even though he's happy for Hongdo and the advancement that she's making, there's a part of him that wishes time would go back to when she was stuck in her house. And Aesop misunderstands that during their, drinking fest. And, Tusu corrects him and says, no, I'm not talking about her original place in the shack, but her original place right next to me. And that was fine up until, episode 9. I was firmly on board with him wanting to just roll back time so that Hongdo can be there next to him. But I think as episode 9 and 10 progressed, he's gotten to a point now, a little bit of that desperation is tinging his conversations with her, where even if it means Hongdo is back in that shack, that's what he would prefer. Because then that allows him the opportunity to pull her out. So I don't know if that's making sense, but that was certainly the vibe that I was getting, and that's what made me really sad. I'm watching 9 and 10, and then wanting, hopefully, Sero to bring him kind of a new perspective, a new hope for a romance of his own, and for him to kind of slowly start to resolve his feelings for Hongdo and such. But anyway, there's a lot in episodes 9 and 10 I cannot express to you, all the little nitpicky things, but that I really liked, and certain things that were a little bit off. But I will say one thing that I did really like about episodes 9 and 10 is the fact that Aesop, and you're kind of like, oh, there are certain things that he does that, just makes me want to smack him around or cringe. But two things is that when all is said and done, and, he shows 2 events to really underscore this. But when all is said and done, he really does care genuinely for Hongdo. And I love how at the end of episode 9, I think it was at the end of episode 9, where he creates what's, a romantic event, if you will. And he has the taste testing people. He gives them, like spending money, and he says, I'm gonna, mess with your face a little bit. They don on helmets, and then one has like lipstick, one has like a big huge mole, and one has like yellow teeth and puffy eyes, and just things like that. But I love how that becomes a way for him to really draw her out and help her to feel comfortable. And as a result of that, little event at the supermarket, I think she then has the courage to ultimately go to the bank and get that loan for herself. And so, that was one of the events. And then the second event, I think, happened in episode 10, where he goes to see her, and he then tells her, he kind of like takes her hair, and he's like, "Oh, why won't you say you love me?" And then he says, "You have this way of making me say things first." And then he tells her that I love you, and then he walks off and such. So you see him really becoming much more in tune with his emotions, being much more genuine with his feelings, which he hasn't been able to do since his brother passed away. And he's kind of, I think that accounts a lot for his reckless living and his kind of narcissism, if you will. So there was certainly that, and I love the fact that now he explains, because of her influence on him, he no longer feels this horror or the symptoms, phobia, if you will, of treating patients. He's able to treat patients on his own, and I'll be curious to see how Hongdo reacts when he eventually reveals that to her, because right now, at the end of episode 10, she's just stunned because he's discovered her big secret and he storms off. But I think pretty soon the tables are going to be turned around, where she's going to want to know, why didn't you tell me earlier that you could see patients without me, and things like that. And so we see both men certainly having difficult times in their reaction with Hongdo, and I think that's charming. One last thing before I end today's review is that Isok has recognized that Hongdo is really sharp in observing certain things, and this is now the third time that she observes certain things. The first, I think, in terms of helping him with his patients, was the diabetic young woman who was going around streaking, and then the second was, of course, Eunho, getting him to treat her much more objectively or empathically, if you will. And then the third time is in episode 10, when Isok goes, of course, to Tusu's precinct, and he's talking to the guy, and then she notices that there's a little box-like thing stuck inside his sock, and so she happens to say Songyang, which is, book of matches, and of course he flips out and things like that. So it's just, I love how she is a compliment to his work, certainly, and he's recognizing that. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing how, maybe as an epilogue to the series, Hongdo is able to then, once she gets out of her shell, pursue perhaps formal education and become something socially and professionally, so that she feels as though she can stand on equal footing with him professionally. Because she does say in this one really poignant scene, she says, I promise that I'll work hard so that you don't regret having selected me. And so, those type of things, I think, certainly bring me back episode after episode, and it's just a quirky romance. So I hope that those of you who are still watching, you're enjoying the ride, and you're enjoying the characters and all the development, despite how desperate Tusu's getting. I'm so sad about Tusu, but I'm hoping that Tusu's, kind personality wins out, and we don't end up not liking him, because he's starting to make me a little nervous. Sorry, I got cut off. But anyway, so what I was saying was, I hope that Tusu kind of holds back and goes back to being the kind, loving Tusu that we know, because he is starting to make me a little nervous. So anyway, for those of you still with the show, I hope you stay with me until the very end, certainly. And you'll notice in each week's episode, or each week's review, I'm going to try to fiddle around a little bit more with the videos. So you'll notice certain things that change from week to week. And so this week I decided, because I remember Nellie had said something like, why don't you try inserting something else so it's not just you talking? Although, Nellie, don't you like hearing me talk? Anyway, her comment was certainly well appreciated. And so at the end of each review from here on out, my hope is to insert a screen capture, I guess, or a little picture of what I thought was one of the best scenes. Not the best scene, because there's too many to choose from, but one of them. And so I'll do that from here on out. So anyway, I hope you're doing well, and next week I'll see you then. Bye. 다음 주에 보자.